Dr. Elena Santos stood motionless before the massive holographic display, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling patterns that filled the research vessel's observation deck. After 15 years of searching, the Stellar Archaeology Division had finally found something extraordinary. The artifact hung suspended in the void before them, its crystalline surface refracting starlight in impossible patterns. Dr. Santos, her AI assistant Aria's voice was carefully neutral. The quantum signature analysis is complete. The results are unprecedented. Elena nodded slowly, already suspecting what the AI would say next. The artifact's energy patterns matched nothing in human records, nor any of the handful of alien technologies they'd encountered since humanity's expansion into the stars. This was older, much older. The temporal decay suggests an age of approximately 2 million years. ARIA continued. The energy output exceeds our largest fusion plants by several orders of magnitude. And it's still active. Captain Sarah Chen's boots clicked against the deck as she approached, her weathered face reflecting the artifact's ethereal glow. I don't like it, Doctor. Something that old, that powerful. It should have been found by now. This sector's been mapped dozens of times. Unless someone wanted it hidden, Elena replied softly. She turned to face the captain, her expression grave. We need to contact Earth immediately. This discovery could change everything we know about. The ship's alert klaxon cut through her words, its harsh wail echoing through the observation deck. Red emergency lighting bathed the room in crimson shadows. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. The sensor officer shouted. Configuration unknown. Energy signatures massive. The holographic display shifted, showing a fleet of vessels emerging from hyperspace. Their design was utterly alien. Organic curves melded with crystalline structures, resembling deep-sea creatures rendered in metal and light. Leading them was a vessel that dwarfed Elena's research ship, its surface rippling with patterns similar to the artifact they'd just discovered. This is High Commander Vostak of the Kelthid Empire. A voice boomed through the ship's communication system. The translation software rendered it in flat, artificial tones that did nothing to hide the underlying menace. You have intruded upon sacred space and interfered with technology belonging to the First Ones. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Captain Chen's hand moved to her sidearm, a futile gesture against ships that could reduce them to atoms, but quintessentially human. Sacred space. There's nothing in any database about this sector being claimed. Your ignorance does not excuse your trespass, the alien commander replied. The Kelthid Empire are the appointed guardians of all First One artifacts. Your species is young, so we will be merciful. Surrender, and we will simply erase all record of your discovery before sending you home. Velena's mind raced. 2 million years old, the artifact's power signature, the way it had been hidden. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. Captain, she whispered urgently, they're lying. The Kelthid didn't build this, and they're not its guardians. They're scavengers. They've been hoarding ancient technology, using it to maintain their dominance over younger species. That's why they appeared so quickly. They must have sensor networks watching every potential artifact site. Chen's expression hardened. She'd seen enough of humanity's own history to recognize imperialism wearing a thin veneer of divine right. Doctor, begin copying all our sensor data to the quantum entanglement transmitter. Even if we don't make it, Earth needs to know what we found. She turned to the communications officer. Open a channel. Your time expires, humans. Vostak's voice held growing impatience. Choose quickly. High Commander. Chen's voice was steel-wrapped in diplomatic courtesy. We apologize for any unintended trespass. However, as this sector is unlisted in any official registry, we request clarification of your authority under Section 7 of the Galactic Commons Exploration Treaty. A pause. When Vostak spoke again, his artificial voice held a note of surprise. You dare quote laws to us? The Kelthid Empire predates your entire civilization. We do not recognize your primitive treaties. "Then you've made a serious mistake," Chen replied calmly. "Because humanity absolutely recognizes them. And if you fire on a civilian research vessel conducting legal exploration under those treaties, you'll learn exactly why the Artemis Accords included so many specific provisions about proportional response." Elena felt a chill at the captain's words. The Artemis Accords had been humanity's first major interstellar treaty, drafted after a particularly aggressive alien species had attacked Earth's early colonies. The resulting human counterattack had become a cautionary tale throughout known space. "You would threaten us." Voss Thak's translator couldn't quite capture the mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Your vessel is alone, unarmored, defenseless." "True," Chen smiled, and there was something ancient in that expression, something that had stalked savannas and outlasted everything that thought itself apex. "But humanity isn't." The quantum entanglement transmitter chimed, confirming that their sensor data had been successfully transmitted to Earth. Elena knew what would happen next. Naval Command would receive the information about the artifact, about the Kelthids' illegal claims. And then, "Final warning," Voss Thak declared. "Surrender, or..." Multiple new signatures burst into existence around them. Ships of human design, all angles and exposed weapon systems. They had been waiting just outside the system, Elena realized. The research vessel's mission hadn't been entirely civilian after all. "This is Admiral Zhang of the Earth Fleet," a new voice cut through the channel. "That research vessel is under our protection. Withdraw immediately." The Kelthid ships shifted formation, their crystalline surfaces flickering with energy patterns. For a moment, Elena thought they would attack anyway. Then, slowly, they began to retreat. "This isn't over," Voss Thak's final transmission held pure hatred. "You have no idea what forces you're meddling with, humans. The artifacts belong to us. All of them. Remember that." As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Elena turned back to the artifact. Its surface seemed to pulse in rhythm with her racing heart, as if responding to her thoughts. The Kelthid were right about one thing. Humanity didn't understand what they were dealing with. But unlike the Kelthid, they intended to learn, not simply hoard. "Doctor," Captain Chen's voice interrupted her thoughts. "I believe you have some calls to make. The Stellar Archaeology Division will want a full report." And she smiled grimly. "I suspect the Admiralty will be very interested in your theories about the Kelthid Empire's technology stockpile." Elena nodded, already composing her report in her mind. The artifact hung in space before them, a silent witness to the opening moves of what she knew would become a much larger conflict. Humanity had stumbled onto something ancient and powerful, and in doing so, had challenged an empire that spanned dozens of worlds. But if the Kelthid thought humanity would simply back down, they had fundamentally misunderstood what kind of species they were dealing with. Humans had emerged from a gravity well far deeper than most spacefaring races, evolved as pursuit predators who could outrun anything through sheer determination. They had clawed their way to the stars through determination and ingenuity. And now they had a mystery to solve, an injustice to correct, and a challenge to overcome. Elena almost pitied the Kelthid. They had no idea what they'd just started. The artifact's glow seemed to intensify, as if it too were awakening to new possibilities. The game had begun. The Kelthid struck at dawn. Admiral John watched from the bridge of the ESS Hyperion as the tactical display filled with enemy signatures. The Kelthid hadn't just attacked one colony. They'd launched simultaneous strikes against 7 human worlds. Their crystal ships descended through atmosphere like falling stars, weapons primed. "Status report," John commanded, his aged face illuminated by the holographic displays. "New Austin is holding, sir. The orbital defense grid is operational. Titan base reports minimal damage. But Kepler 100 and 86F. His tactical officer paused, swallowing hard. "They hit the mining colonies first. Civilian casualties are significant." Zhang's expression didn't change, but his hands tightened on the command rail. The Kelthid had obviously studied human military doctrine, targeting what they thought were vulnerable resource extraction points, a logical strategy against most species. But humans weren't most species. Execute Protocol Thermopylae, John ordered. All ships, initiate contingency plans. Across human space, a carefully orchestrated dance began. The Kelthid had expected resistance from the orbital defense platforms, from the patrol fleets. They hadn't expected every civilian mining vessel to suddenly reveal military-grade shield generators. Hadn't anticipated that those vulnerable mining colonies were built like bunkers, with defense systems integrated into the very rock. On Kepler 186F, mining foreman Carlos Rodriguez stood in his control center, watching Kelthid dropships descend. His miners were already in position, industrial excavation equipment repurposed into makeshift weapons. They had drilled through mountains. They could drill through alien ships just as easily. Remember, he transmitted to his crew, just like we practiced. Let them land first. The Kelthid ships touched down in textbook formation, disgorging troops in crystalline armor. They advanced on the mining complex with practiced precision, weapons ready. They reached the main gates unopposed. That's when the ground beneath them collapsed. The miners had spent generations tunneling through this world. They knew every fault line, every weak point. Entire sections of the landing zone had been carefully undermined, ready to give way at the push of a button. As Kelthid troops and vehicles plunged into the prepared pit traps, automated mining drones emerged from hidden tunnels, industrial cutting lasers repurposed into deadly weapons. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to emerge from the very rock itself, using the planet as both weapon and shield. In orbit above New Austin, the Kelthid fleet encountered a different kind of surprise. The orbital defense platforms they dismissed as primitive suddenly revealed quantum-linked targeting systems, coordinating their fire with impossible precision. But more shocking was what happened when they destroyed one. Confirmed direct hit on defense platform Charlie, a Kelthid commander reported. Moving to next target. Wait. Energy spike. The destroyed platform's reactor didn't just detonate. It collapsed in a carefully controlled manner, creating a temporary artificial gravity, that dragged the nearest Kelthid ships off course. As they struggled to compensate, human vessels emerged from hiding, using the gravitational disruption as cover for their attack runs. On the Hyperion's bridge, John watched the battle unfold. The Kelthid had superior technology, yes, but humanity had spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of fight. Every civilian installation was built with military applications in mind. Every piece of industrial equipment could be weaponized, even their scientific research vessels, as the Kelthid had already discovered, carried hidden surprises. "Sir," his communications officer called out. "Message from Titan Base. They're reporting." "Sir, they're saying the miners have captured a Kelthid command ship intact." Zhang allowed himself a small smile. The Kelthid had made a fundamental error in their calculations. They'd assumed that humanity's relative youth as a spacefaring species meant technological inferiority. They hadn't understood that humans had evolved on a death world, that every step of their development had been a fight for survival. They hadn't realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to adapt, to turn anything and everything into a tool for survival. "Send word to all commands," John ordered. "Execute Phase 2. Let's show our friends what happens when you corner a species that evolved as pursuit predators." Across human space, the counterattack began. Mining vessels used their industrial tractor beams to tear Kelthid ships apart. Research stations revealed experimental weapons that ignored crystalline shields. And on a dozen worlds, human colonists who had trained their entire lives for this moment emerged from hiding to strike at the invaders. On Kepler 186F, Carlos Rodriguez led his miners through the tunnel network, their modified excavation suits proving surprisingly effective against Kelthid armor. They had spent generations shaping this world to their needs. Now they were using that knowledge to defend it. Team 3 reports another dropship disabled. His operations chief reported. Team 7 has secured their command center. Sir, the aliens are trying to retreat, but they can't find their way out of the tunnel maze. Carlos nodded grimly. His people had drilled these tunnels, had lived in them, worked in them, mapped every meter. The Kelthid were lost in a three-dimensional maze that could be reconfigured at will, fighting an enemy that could appear from any direction and vanish just as quickly. In orbit, the battle was reaching its climax. The Kelthid's superior technology couldn't compensate for the fact that every piece of human infrastructure had been designed with warfare in mind. Their sensors were blinded by civilian communication satellites suddenly broadcasting military-grade jamming. Their formations were disrupted by mining platforms using mass drivers to launch debris fields with surgical precision. All colonies reporting. Sir, Zhang's tactical officer announced. The Kelthid are in full retreat. Confirmed victories at New Austin, Titan Base, and Kepler 186 F. The other colonies are reporting similar successes. Zhang studied the tactical display, watching Kelthid ships flee into hyperspace. They had won this battle, but he knew it was only the beginning. The Kelthid would return, better prepared next time. But humanity would be ready. They always were. Send word to Fleet Command, he ordered. The Kelthid have shown their hand. Now it's our turn. Begin Operation Long Hunt. As the orders went out, Zhang reflected on the old military maxim about generals always fighting the last war. The Kelthid had prepared to fight the humans they expected. A young, technologically inferior species. Instead, they had found themselves facing an enemy that had turned their entire civilization into a weapon that could adapt any tool to military use, that had hidden defensive capabilities in plain sight for generations. They had thought they were attacking vulnerable colonies. Instead, they had walked into fortresses. And now, they would learn why humanity's first contact protocols had included so many provisions about proportional response. The hunt was about to begin. High Commander Vostak's crystalline fingers tapped nervously against his command throne as he studied the tactical display. The human fleet shouldn't have been able to follow them through the Maelstrom Nebula. The ionic storms and gravitational distortions made conventional FTL travel impossible. It was why the Kelthid had chosen this route for their retreat. Yet there they were. Another contact, his sensor officer reported, mandibles clicking with anxiety. Their ships are still pursuing. They're using the gravitational distortions to slingshot themselves forward. Vostak's inner membranes pulsed with disbelief. The humans were treating the most dangerous navigational hazard in this sector of space as a gravitational highway. Their ships would emerge from one distortion only to deliberately dive into another, building momentum in ways that should have torn their vessels apart. Impossible, he muttered. Their ship's structural integrity. High Commander. The tactical officer's crystalline carapace flushed with alarm patterns. They're catching up. On the main display, Vostak watched human vessels emerge from the nebula's storms like ancient sea predators breaching the waves. Their ships bore scars from the journey, armor plates warped and buckled, but they kept coming. The Kelthid fleet had superior speed in normal space, superior weapons, superior shields. None of it mattered because the humans simply refused to stop. New contact. The sensor officer's voice cracked. Multiple signatures. By the first ones, they're coming from ahead of us too. A second human battle group emerged from the nebula's crimson depths. They had split their forces, sending ships on a wider route to circle around and cut off the Kelthid's escape. The energy cost must have been astronomical, the strain on their crews immense, but they had done it anyway. All ships, emergency maneuvers, Vostak ordered. Dive into the nearest storm system. They can't maintain this pursuit forever. But even as he gave the order, he knew he was wrong. The humans had been pursuing them for 3 days without rest, through conditions that should have been unsurvivable. They had adapted their tactics on the fly, learned to use the nebula's hazards as weapons and highways, and they showed no signs of stopping. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of the Hyperion, his uniform bearing the grime of 3 days without rest. The entire crew showed similar signs of exhaustion, but their eyes remained sharp, focused. They had trained for this, prepared for the day when humanity would need to remind the galaxy why Earth's apex predators had reached the stars. Target analysis, he ordered, voiced hoarse from days of giving commands. The Kelthid ships are showing signs of stress, his tactical officer reported. Their crystal-based technology doesn't handle prolonged gravitational distortion well. They're starting to crack. Zhang nodded. The Kelthid had built their empire on stolen technology, using artifacts they barely understood. Humanity had built theirs through centuries of trial and error, of learning their limits and then pushing past them. All ships, Zhang transmitted to the fleet, execute final phase. Operation Long Hunt ends today. Across the nebula, human vessels began their final approach. They had herded the Kelthid fleet like ancient hunters driving prey toward a cliff edge. Now came the killing stroke. The Kelthid ships dove into a particularly dense storm system, hoping to lose their pursuers in the chaos. Instead, they found themselves surrounded. Human vessels emerged from hiding places within the storm itself. They had arrived days earlier, plotting every eddy and current, setting up the perfect ambush. How? Vostak demanded as human ships closed in from all directions. How did you navigate this? How did you coordinate in these conditions? You rely too much on your stolen technology. John's reply came through clearly despite the nebula's interference. Humanity learned to navigate by the stars before we had computers. We learned to coordinate military operations before we had radio. When those tools fail us, we fall back on older methods, more reliable methods. The human ships had used the nebula's magnetic fields to transmit crude but effective signals. They had navigated through the storms by observing patterns in the chaos, just as their ancestors had read weather systems and ocean currents. Where the Kelthid saw only hostile conditions, humanity saw opportunities. Last chance, High Commander, Zhang offered. Surrender now, or learn exactly how persistent we can be. Vostak's inner membranes pulsed with fear as he realized the full magnitude of his error. The Kelthid had dismissed humanity as primitive because they lacked the advanced technology of the first ones. But that very primitiveness had made them infinitely more dangerous. They could operate without their technology if needed, could adapt to any conditions, could keep fighting long past the point where any rational species would have given up. All ships, he transmitted, his pride crumbling in the face of survival. Stand down. Signal our surrender. As the Kelthid fleet powered down their weapons, Zhang allowed himself a small sigh of relief. His crews were exhausted, their ships pushed to their absolute limits. But they had proved something vital, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology, but their sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. Send word to Fleet Command, he ordered. The Kelthid battle fleet has been captured intact. Tell them. He smiled slightly, remembering ancient legends. Tell them the wild hunt is complete. In the aftermath, as human ships began securing their prizes, Vostak received one final transmission from Zhang. You should know, the human admiral said, that this nebula was considered unnavigable by our own scientists until recently. Your retreat route gave us the perfect opportunity to prove otherwise. Thank you for that. Vostak's crystalline form shuddered. The humans hadn't just pursued them through impossible conditions. They had used the pursuit itself as a training exercise, learning and adapting even in the heat of battle. No wonder the younger races spoke of humanity with such fear and respect. They were, in the truest sense, the galaxy's perfect hunters. And the Kelthid Empire had just learned why you never ran from a pursuit predator. It only taught them how to chase you better. Dr. Elena Santos stood before the containment field, studying the artifact they'd recovered from the Kelthid flagship. After 3 weeks of analysis, they'd barely scratched the surface of its capabilities. But what they had learned was staggering. It's a library, she explained to Admiral Zhang, who stood beside her in the high-security research facility. Not just a database, a complete repository of First One technology and history. The Kelthid didn't build their empire. They found these artifacts and used them to subjugate other races, claiming divine authority. Zhang nodded slowly, his weathered face reflecting the artifact's glow. And now we have proof. The question is, what do we do with it? The door chimed, admitting Captain Chen. She'd earned a promotion after the battle at Kepler 186F, her research vessel's data proving crucial to understanding Kelthid weaknesses. Our guests have arrived, Admiral. High Commander Vostak entered, his crystalline form dulled by captivity. He was accompanied by several other high-ranking Kelthid, all showing signs of stress in their fractured carapaces. Their escort of human marines seemed almost superfluous. These were broken beings, their entire worldview shattered. You wanted to show us something. Vostak's translated voice was subdued. Elena gestured to the artifact. We've decoded enough to understand what the First Ones intended. These repositories weren't meant to be hoarded. They were meant to be shared, to help younger species develop safely, to avoid the mistakes that led to the First One's disappearance. Vostak's inner membranes pulsed with emotion. You're lying. The artifacts are weapons, tools of power. That's all they've ever been. No, Elena said softly. That's all you chose to see in them. Look. She activated a sequence they decoded. The artifact's surface shifted, displaying images of impossible beauty, worlds being born, civilizations rising among the stars, species working together to achieve wonders. The First Ones hadn't been conquerors. They had been teachers, guardians, trying to prepare the galaxy for challenges yet to come. Your entire empire, Zhang said quietly, was built on a fundamental misunderstanding. The First Ones didn't leave these artifacts as weapons of war. They left them as tools of peace. Vostak's crystalline form trembled. Then, everything we believed was wrong, Elena completed. But that's not why we brought you here today. She nodded to Captain Chen, who activated a communications link. The room's displays filled with images from across human space, the worlds the Kelthid had attacked. But instead of scenes of destruction, they showed reconstruction. Human engineers working alongside captured Kelthid, sharing knowledge, rebuilding together. Your soldiers surrendered, Zhang explained. Under our laws, prisoners of war must be treated humanely. Many of them volunteered to help repair the damage they'd caused, and in doing so, they learned something your empire forgot long ago: the true strength of cooperation. Vostak watched as the images continued, Kelthid troops learning human construction techniques, adapting their crystalline technology to peaceful purposes. Human scientists working with Kelthid engineers to understand their biocrystal ships, finding ways to improve both species' technology. I don't understand, he finally said. You could have executed us. Used these revelations to destroy our empire completely. Why show mercy? Elena stepped forward. Because that's the real lesson the First Ones tried to teach. True power isn't about dominance. It's about lifting others up. Humanity fought you not because we wanted to destroy you, but because you needed to be stopped from destroying yourselves. And now, Zhang added, we're offering you a choice. The Admiral gestured, and more displays activated. They showed diplomatic communications, trade proposals, educational exchanges, a complete framework for transforming the Kelthid Empire from a military dictatorship into something new. Your empire stands at a crossroads, Zhang continued. You can resist, fight to preserve a lie, and face the consequences, or you can help us unlock these artifacts' true purpose. Join humanity in learning what the First Ones actually wanted to teach us all. Learn. Vostak's translator couldn't quite capture the complex emotions in his voice. After everything we did, you would trust us. Trust is earned, Chen said firmly. But everyone deserves the chance to try. That's another human trait you should understand. We believe in second chances. Elena watched the Kelthid leaders closely. She saw the moment the truth fully hit them. That humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to wage war, but their capacity to forge peace from conflict. They had defeated the Kelthid not just through superior tactics or adaptability, but by understanding a fundamental truth the first ones had tried to teach. Real power comes from lifting others up, not holding them down. The choice is yours, John concluded. But remember, humanity didn't evolve just as hunters. We survived because we learned to cooperate, to form communities, to turn enemies into allies. We're offering you the chance to do the same. Voss Thak stepped closer to the artifact, his crystalline form reflecting its ancient light. For the first time, Alina saw something new in his posture. Not pride or arrogance, but wonder. The same wonder she had felt when they first discovered it. Perhaps, the Kelthid commander said slowly, it is time for our empire to evolve as well. As the discussions continued, Alina smiled. Humanity had proven they could outfight anyone in the galaxy. But more importantly, they had proven they could choose not to. That was the true meaning of strength, not just the capability for violence, but the wisdom to know when to show mercy. The artifact's glow seemed to brighten, as if approving. The first ones had waited millions of years for their successors to learn this lesson. Now finally, their patience was being rewarded. 1 year later, the Galactic Commons had never seen anything quite like it. The Great Assembly Hall, normally segregated by species and political blocks, had been transformed. Humans sat alongside Kelthid, their differences in biology and culture no longer barriers but bridges. Representatives from dozens of younger species watched in amazement as their former oppressors and the galaxy's newest power presented a unified front. Admiral Zhang, now serving as Earth's diplomatic representative, stood at the podium. Beside him, High Commander Voss Thak's crystalline form gleamed with renewed purpose. The changes in the former Imperial leader were subtle but profound. His rigid posture replaced by a more open stance, his translator now calibrated to convey nuance rather than intimidation. For too long, Zhang began, the galaxy has been divided between those who hoard knowledge and those denied it. Today, that changes. The main display activated, showing the first of many artifacts they had decoded together. Unlike before, its contents were open for all to see, the first one's legacy of knowledge, their hopes for the species that would follow them. The Kelthid Empire, Voss Thak continued, his voice carrying the humility that would have been unthinkable a year ago, was wrong. We twisted the first one's gifts into tools of oppression. But thanks to humanity's intervention and mercy, we now understand our true purpose. Dr. Elena Santos, seated in the human delegation, smiled as she watched former enemies become partners in progress. The past year had been transformative. Human adaptability combined with Kelthid biocrystal technology had led to breakthroughs in everything from medicine to space travel. But more importantly, it had led to understanding. The first ones didn't disappear, Zhang explained to the assembly. They evolved beyond physical form. But before they did, they left these repositories, not as weapons or tools of power, but as guideposts. They wanted to ensure that when younger species reached for the stars, they would have guides to help them avoid ancient mistakes. The display shifted, showing new joint human-Kelthid research stations. Former Imperial warships, their weapons replaced with scientific equipment, now served as deep space exploration vessels. The crystal technology that had once enforced dominance now powered hospitals and research facilities. We propose, Voss Thak announced, the creation of a new body within the Galactic Commons, the Archives of Tomorrow, a collaborative effort to unlock, understand, and share the first one's knowledge with all species ready to receive it. The assembly erupted in discussion. Many of the older powers, those who had lived in fear of the Kelthid Empire, were understandably skeptical. But they couldn't deny the results of the past year's cooperation. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood to address these concerns. Some of you fear this is too much change, too quickly. You wonder if the Kelthid can be trusted, if humanity's influence will become just another form of dominance. These are valid concerns, but consider this. The first ones left us these gifts, not because we were ready, but because they trusted we could become ready. She gestured to the various species present. Look around you. Every species here evolved on different worlds, faced different challenges, developed different solutions. That diversity isn't a weakness. It's our greatest strength. The first ones understood this. It's why they didn't simply give us all their technology. They wanted us to learn, to grow, to find our own paths forward. Elena watched the younger species representatives especially closely. Their worlds had suffered most under Kelthid rule, yet many now showed cautious optimism. They had seen how humanity's intervention had transformed their former oppressors. More importantly, they had seen how humans wielded power, not through dominance, but through cooperation and mutual growth. The choice before us is simple, John concluded. We can cling to old fears and divisions, or we can embrace a new way forward. Humanity emerged from a death world, evolved as pursuit predators, developed in isolation. Yet we learned to turn competitors into allies, to transform conflict into cooperation. If we could make that journey, anyone can. Vostak's crystalline form resonated with emotion as he added, and those who have the furthest to go deserve the most help in getting there. The voting was not unanimous. Such things never were in galactic politics, but the outcome was clear. The archives of tomorrow would become reality, a new chapter in galactic history written by former enemies working together. As the assembly concluded, Elena found herself back in the research lab where it had all started. The original artifact still hung suspended in its containment field, but now it was surrounded by students from a dozen species, all learning together. Among them, human and Kelthid instructors worked side by side, each bringing their unique perspectives to understanding the First One's legacy. Quite a change from a year ago, Admiral Zhang observed, joining her at the observation window. Elena nodded. The First Ones could have given us all the answers. Instead, they gave us questions, challenges that forced us to grow beyond our limitations. Much like humanity did for the Kelthid, Zhang mused. And like they did for us, Elena added. Their crystal technology has revolutionized our understanding of quantum mechanics. By teaching them mercy, we learned new forms of strength. Outside the lab's windows, Earth's sunset painted the sky in colors that reminded Elena of the nebula where humans had proven their worth as hunters. But now those same skills, persistence, adaptability, determination, were being used to hunt knowledge rather than enemies.